Welcome everybody to another episode of your spiritual journey. This is Dr. Bob, and we're here to talk about things that are important to your soul. Today's guest is someone who I've heard about for a while, and I was very happy to run into him at the Mind, Body, Spirit Expo that was recently held here in Pittsburgh. And I've got to say that he's lived up to all my expectations of, what I knew from his reputation. His name is John Michael Thornton. He's been around the A.R.E., I guess, all his life because his parents happened to meet at the A.R.E. For those of you new to the program, the A.R.E. is the Association for Research and Enlightenment. And to get to it, you go to edgarcayce.org. So that would let you know basically that it's all about Edgar Cayce, and it's where all of the records on his readings are kept. Anyway, he's been around those concepts of reincarnation and astrology and Cayce all of his life, and he grew up with those influences. At this point in his life, he's known as a psychic, and in case you're not quite sure what a psychic does, and probably they don't all do the same thing, I was curious myself, so I went to see John and actually had a reading from him just a couple days ago. So I'm able to speak from experience and to say he's the real deal. So I don't know that I'm going to go into anything else. Let's see, he did train as a psychic at the Natural Psychic School of Metaphysics. And he was the youngest graduate at age 15. The oldest graduate in that class was 86 years old. And he's been giving readings ever since. Learning how to be a psychic, he says, and how to turn on and off those abilities have changed his life and taught him to cope with the information that was pouring into his head. He studied religion and ethics at Youngstown State University, graduating in 1998. He worked at the A.R.E. for a while, and then he moved on to New York City to wear a tie and pretend to be normal. And that didn't work out so well. So he moved back to Youngstown. In 2008, he became a full-time psychic and teacher. And he's also got a background in both yoga and Cayce. So he talks a lot about health and medical information because of that background in Cayce and yoga. So I think that's about all I'm going to give you, and I'm going to let him tell his story. Let us know about his journey, his spiritual journey from childhood until now, and then we'll pepper him with questions. So, John, it's all yours.
Thanks, Bob. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. So, yeah, my parents actually did meet because of the A.R.E. My father had already been involved with the Edgar Cayce organizations when he was in college. And at this time, so this would have been early to mid 70s, the A.R.E. was really trying to make a footprint and some inroads into a younger audience. The A.R.E.'s audience, for the most part, has always trended older. And you'd think that that would mean they would eventually go away. But no, they just keep finding more people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who want to be involved. And so they were like, we need to get some young people. So dad was a local representative for Youngstown State University to try to get together an event at his college, and my mother was the only one who showed up.
Oh,
And so,
geez.
which is very sweet and kind of sad. And so the two of them bonded over that, and then Edgar Casey and the A.R.E. really became a major source of support for them when they were growing, when they were got married, and then raising me. Because one of the best things that I feel the A.R.E. as an organization has done is create study groups and a network of study groups that people can work on spiritual journeys, spiritual practices, but also really find community.
Right.
And so here we are 50 years later. My parents are still involved in a couple study groups. They have a dream group. Dad loves a group. So he's got an online version, he's got an in-person one, but it really has been a major source of structure in our lives. And so we went to conferences at the A.R.E. I ignored an awful lot of really respectable lecturers when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and tried to stay entertained when they were talking about things that went right over my head. And
Sure.
then I also we the ARE used to have a camp, ARE camp, and I spent 14 summers at the ARE camp, both as a camper and then later as a camp cook. And so
That's a lot of summers.
that's a lot of summers. It's a lot of
Yeah.
summers. And so yeah, we went the first time when I was 2, and that was the summer that everybody got dysentery. And so we, yeah, so we didn't go
This
back for a
says a
couple of
lot
years.
for
And
this camp. Yeah.
yes, everybody got sick. And then a couple of years later, after they swore up and down that they've got the hygiene problems fixed, we went back and then didn't miss a year for a very long time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I won't. I'm not really involved with the ARE as an organization now, but I still talk a lot about Edgar Casey, both in my readings and in a lot of the talks that I give, because so much of the Casey material was foundational to how I see psychics in the world.
Yeah.
Um, that because that was
So
how I grew up. That was what psychics looked like, not necessarily the specifically unconscious kind, because for everyone who doesn't know, Casey was known as the sleeping prophet. He gave most of his readings in an unconscious state. Um, for those of you who are too young to remember, there was a time when there were these things called tabloid magazines, and you'd see them at grocery store checkout lanes. And Casey would every once in a while show up on the cover as the sleeping prophet predicts new things for America. He'd been dead for 50 years at that point. He wasn't predicting anything new. But the idea of Edgar Casey stayed around for a very long time. And
yeah.
so that idea for me of like, here's what a psychic is. You're giving readings specifically to help people, both spiritually and physically. And you're not necessarily getting bogged down in too many of the details of people's lives. And of course, every psychic does talk about relationships and career and health and all the things that bother us on a day-to-day basis. But I'm a really big believer that a psychic reading should be something you get every once in a while. You don't need one every day or every week, but it's a great opportunity to sort of give yourself a reset, look more deeply at situations in your life, and get some concrete information that is going to help you be better quickly. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct for any way you may have drifted off your spiritual path, but really be concrete in the information you get as opposed to anything being a little too vague or too wishy-washy. Doesn't mean that I don't occasionally say things that sound really vague, but the goal is always clarity. Make sense?
Yeah. Well, Casey typically would tap into the Akashic Records.
Mm-hmm.
And is that something that you are doing when you do your readings? Is that where that information is stored and coming from? Or is there some other process or thought system that you're using when you do this?
At this point, I can say I'm not entirely sure. And when I am reading a person, I feel like I get information from multiple sources. And when I was younger, I would be I would try really hard to see, like, where is this coming from, or how am I picking this up? Am I getting it visually? Am I getting it through feeling, or am I hearing words? And or am I feeling a feeling of a sensation in my own physical body that is something that my client may be feeling? And that is no longer quite so true, which to a certain extent is nice, because there were times when I would be reading for someone and say, God, I really hope this pain is yours and not mine, because I'd like
Oh,
for you to take it with you when you're done. And but there were times when I would feel very strongly physical sensations and then try to work it out intuitively what was going on. At this point, I know that I do tap into um, a greater well of knowledge than is ever inside my head, because not
yeah.
only do I get information when I'm talking to a client, and it oftentimes just comes from a sense of knowing, as opposed to feeling like I'm repeating something that someone's talking into my ear. And but I remember one time I was doing a reading for a woman and I told her, "Oh, the reason why you're having this problem is because your doctor switched your medication to vasodilators." And she went, "Oh, that makes sense." And I thought, I have no idea what a vasodilator is. I went upstairs and looked it up on Google afterwards
Yeah.
and thought, I don't think I've ever heard that word before in my life. But I know that I'm getting information that isn't just coming from stuff I already know. And
Right.
so I don't know exactly what source it's coming from. I always specify that I want my information to be truthful, honest, and beneficial for all concerned. I
Mhm.
also know that I apologize. I thought I had all my alarms turned off, and apparently I didn't. So if you just heard that, I apologize. Um, but yeah, I know that I get information from my spirit guides. I know I get information from my client spirit guides. Um, I also can say that a lot of what I get is very specific to the person, because I've done readings where I read for spouses, and same information looks a lot different coming from a slightly different perspective. And so
Yeah.
it very much is tailored to who I'm talking to. And I also know that I'm not pulling stuff directly from someone's head, because while a certain amount of what I might give in a reading can often be confirmation for the client, where they go, yeah, that's kind of what I thought was going on, but I wasn't happy about it. I don't think a reading is good unless you bring through something that is a surprise. Doesn't necessarily have to be earth shattering, but it
Yeah.
should at least be more than you could get from just chatting with a very wise friend.
Uh-huh.
So is it from the
So,
Akashic Records? Probably some of it. All of it, I think I'm pretty sure I'm pulling from some other sources at this point.
yeah. I like the honesty of your answer. Rather, not that I didn't expect you to be honest.
Mhm.
It's just, it's, I guess it would be easy to say, yeah, I get it from the Akashic Records and just say that's it. Or,
Mhm.
yeah, I get it from the spirit guides. And
Mhm.
so you're saying really that it's kind of a mix, or for
It is
one
a mix.
client, is it typically, well, say in the session that I had with you,
Hmm.
uh,
I feel like it kind of depended on what we were talking about. Because if we were
okay,
talking
so the
about,
topic
say,
changed the source.
yes, because if we were talking about, and I, of course, will not get into details about your reading, that's yours and yours alone,
Yeah.
but we were talking about some of the aspects of your relationship with your wife. And some of that I felt like, okay, I can see the karmic bonds between these two people. I can see how they've been interwoven multiple lifetimes, and took a while to get to the point where they could be together this lifetime without being less than their best selves, if that's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
And some of that may have been coming from more of the Akashic record, but also some of it was me looking at how your energies intertwine. And so it it is coming from a combination of sources. And yeah, it'd be easy to say it's always it's always coming from spirit or divine or Akashic or all these different sources. But in my experience of my own work, that's not a complete answer.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is someone who, while my specialty is not mediumship, sometimes it is a spirit who has passed on who's got something they want to say. And it would not be coming from the Akashic records. That's coming from some dude who's sort of standing here telling me he's got something to say. So
Yeah.
I don't my goal is always that the information be of the most truthful and best clarity. And after that rule, then where we're sourcing feels a little more variable to me. It's whatever's going to be most important for the client.
Yeah.
And whenever I do my best to make sure that my focus is client centric, then that's when I get some of the more interesting or unexpected moments out of a reading. Um, for example, this is in my head because I had someone ask about it recently. I was reading for a client about 15 years ago who was looking for water on their property. They had a drilling company come out, um, hadn't had any luck, and she was getting a psychic reading with me for other stuff. And during the reading, I said, I feel convinced that there is water on this property. And I'm trying to tell her, like, so if you go out your front door and you turn left and you walk like 30 paces. And she said, and she's like, that's no help at all. And said, would you be willing to come out and do some dowsing on site? And I said, I have never done that, but I'm willing to give it a try. We marked a spot. The drilling company came out, drilled a hole, and found water on a property that they had punched, I think, 4 holes in at that point and found nothing. And did I was where was I getting the knowledge that there was water on it? That was probably coming from spirit guides and maybe even nature spirits of the property. When it came time to actually wander around in a vacant field, that was a skill with dowsing that I hadn't really explored yet. And
Yeah.
so I feel like with all of us, it's more important to keep your clarity and your focus right than to be super conscious of, I only get information this way or I only get information this way. My job is to be here for my clients. However that
Yeah.
happens is I'm slightly agnostic about the actual source, as long as it feels like it is a good, positive, truthful source. I don't need anybody trying to spread lies with my clients, but as long as my source feels clear, clean, and truthful, then we get the information that's helpful.
Yeah. So, just to back up a bit to to your childhood and growing up,
Yes.
were you raised with a in a particular religion or denomination, or
Well, we started off Methodist, and then for a brief period, a couple years, my parents went. I don't know if they call themselves Pentecostal, but mom refers to them as the Holy Rollers now.
yeah,
And um, didn't stay there too long. I was too young to really remember any of that, other than my mother occasionally telling me, no, we don't talk about reincarnation at church.
okay,
So uh, we ended up back at the Methodist church for a while. And then when I got to college, as a religious studies major, I felt like I was no longer vibing with organized religion. Uh,
uh,
Nothing like studying it to give you a slightly different perspective on it.
yeah,
And my parents now go to a Unity church, and I'll sometimes join them for that. And when asked, what is your family church? I say it's the Unity Church. But
uh huh,
most of my spiritual practice now is personal as opposed to organized. It's very disorganized religion.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. So, and that leads me to another question. Uh, as long as your narrative is finished at this point, I can.
Please ask me anything
Is
you
it
want.
okay to go with the questions?
Mhm.
Okay. Uh, and that has to do with your concept of God.
Yes.
So, what is that? What have you formed in your mind or in your heart as
Yeah.
to, okay, this is what God is for me?
I'm not sure that I have a good, clear answer on that. I do believe in a divine presence. I do feel like I have had on a couple of occasions in my life the um, privilege to feel like I have connected intimately with the divine presence
Mhm.
and had some minor, if not bigger, miracles in my life. And so I very much do believe in God, but I don't believe in some bearded dude sitting on top of a mountain
Yeah.
passing judgment like that. That doesn't feel like it makes sense with my experiences. I also, at this point, and I give myself all the room and grace possible to say, my answer to this may change any day, any minute, at any time,
Yeah.
is that um, I don't feel like I've ever really connected when I have connected with the divine with a personality, or at least not a personality that I can understand. It always felt too big, too
Mhm.
complex for me to understand in any way, shape, or form the will or personhood of God. And so while I believe in God, I believe I have seen God's presence in my life. I have seen God move people's hearts and minds. I am currently of the opinion that here on earth, understanding God or what God may want at any given time is beyond our ken. And I feel like that's the most absolutely diplomatic answer I could ever possibly give on this.
Okay.
um, I got kicked out of Lilydale because I started an argument once over the nature of God, and so I'm trying not to get kicked out of places anymore. But I, while I do believe that there is a God that cares, I also believe that our journey as a soul is very complex, and the choices that we make, we're allowed to make those choices, even if they are bad choices that lead to pain and suffering. And so, does God care about us? Yes. Will God intercede for us? Yes. Should we expect God to save us from our own bad judgment? Probably not, especially if there is a lesson that our soul needs to learn. We're going to have the opportunity to learn that. Hopefully, we'll learn it in an easy way. If we are incapable of learning it the easy way, we'll get to learn it in progressively more and more difficult ways until finally the lesson sinks in. And I know that I've seen that in my own life and in my clients' lives. So, yeah, I believe in God. Do not believe in the bearded dude sitting on a mountain. That's Zeus.
Right.
So, uh, I, I, I feel like my idea of the divine is still shifting and changing.
Yeah.
And I hope that as I continue to learn and grow, I will find a better, more concrete relationship with the divine. But I would never presume to know what exactly at any given moment God wants.
Mhm. Do you think it's possible to know? I mean, you are one
I feel like it
who,
might be above my pay grade. I don't know.
well,
I
you
do not
help
know if
communicate.
yes.
You help communicate for other people.
Yeah.
Are you communicating to parts of themselves? Or are you communicating to some higher power?
Bits of
Or,
both.
you
And I
mentioned, say,
also
spirit guides.
yes.
How's
And
what are
to
they
me to me a
in this
spirit
in this
guide,
picture?
yeah. To me a spirit guide, and this is my own experience, your mileage may vary. A spirit guide is a soul that more is further down along the path than you are at this given time, and perhaps has a different perspective, but is offering help and guidance for you either in this lifetime, in this moment, or even over multiple lifetimes. And so you may have a spirit guide who is with you for a period of incredible difficulty and will and after that period of time is over, will be done with you because you no longer need them. And we also have spirit guides that seem like they're with us our entire lives. I Spirit guides to me still feel knowable in a way that I don't feel like God is knowable, at least for me with my human brain. And so spirit guide is a non-incarnate that I feel like I can have a conversation with because I have, and is more knowledgeable and has better perspective and access to information that I do not have at any given time. But is not necessarily a god or angel or divine presence. Spirit guides still feel pretty knowable to me. And
Okay.
so I tend to think of them as souls that are not currently incarnated and are helping us on our spiritual journey. And to a great extent, that is probably part of their spiritual journey, since helping others is a big part of growing and learning as a soul. And so there may come a time when being here on earth in a physical body is not the most optimal way to continue growing as a soul, but helping out on earth is still really important. And so maybe that would be a time when a soul would be given the opportunity or choose to become a spirit guide. But yeah, spirit guides still feel knowable to me in a way that the divine presence is less understandable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean it's
Mm-hmm.
closer to the current incarnation, so
Yeah.
there's a less of a
Mm-hmm.
gap.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also if you are, let's say, God, and you are a divine presence that is overseeing the entire universe, perhaps trying to understand I got to pay the bills on Thursday is would be a challenge. Now, if you are as omnipotent and omnipresent as the divine would be, then maybe you can understand everything. But on a day-to-day basis, spirit guides seem to be the place where it's helpful.
Yeah.
And I don't and to give us guidance on the things that are still very human. Like I'm scared, I'm worried about my job, I'm worried about my finances, I'm worried about my spouse, I'm worried about the spot on my leg. And as an entity that remembers perhaps being in a physical body, then that takes on an urgency that a presence that perhaps couldn't remember being in a body and says, well, okay, your soul still survives after the physical body leaves. What's the big deal? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know if this is getting off track, but I've encountered a number of different entities in the course of my life and career that don't necessarily fall into some of the easy categories of like there's God and then there's angels and then there's spirit guides, and I've run into entities that I firmly believe fall into the category of fairies or elementals. I feel like I have met angels on a couple of occasions. I have connected with souls that have passed on both recently and distantly. I've spent plenty of time talking to spirit guides, and there's a whole world and ecosystem that is not visible to our physical eyes around us. And the more that we can come to center and tune in to what else is out there, the more it opens up your eyes, opens up your mind to possibilities in this world. And
Yeah.
the more understanding you can get for a lot of the stuff that kind of freaks us out, whether it be angels, fairies, spirits, aliens, gods, and demons. Knowing that there's more out there than you can see with your physical eyes is pretty cool. And
Hmm.
and sometimes you feel like you get a little bit of evidence, and that's also pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm really curious about how you managed to get kicked out of Lilydale because, as a matter of fact,
Okay.
just the week prior to this interview airing is someone who's been certified by Lilydale and is it also went to school to become
Yes.
a reverend
Mm-hmm.
at Lilydale.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that
So
you know her well
yeah.
enough that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be sharing an office with her soon. So,
Yes. Yes. And we have bonded over our mutual times of getting in trouble with Lilydale. Um, Lilydale is a wonderful organization, is a wonderful place. I have been very grateful and had the opportunity to teach there a couple of occasions. Um, I I've taught, I think, five times now in Lilydale, three times main season, two times off season. I've given readings there. I am not a Lilydale approved medium, but I do have a lot of respect and affection for the organization uh, in general. So I was doing a talk, and a woman in the audience asked me, "So, what is the difference between spirit guides, your higher self, and the divine?" And I stuck my foot in it when I said, "Your higher self is you, only with a greater perspective. Your spirit guides are like your guidance counselors. They're here to help you out on any given day, and they care about you because they want you to grow as a soul, and you're also kind of their assignment or job. God loves you and wants you to grow as a soul and doesn't seem to really care how you do that. And so if your growth requires misery, that's fine. But it is more important for you to grow as a soul than for you to be happy on any given day." People got angry. And I
wow.
know that part of it is, we hear what we want to hear. But I had a lady stand up and say, "What do you mean God doesn't care if I'm happy?" And things went downhill from there. Uh, I looked at the clock and it took me about 15 minutes to get people okay with me again and try to walk that back a little bit. I don't disagree with anything I said. I could have said it in a better way, and I do my best to say it in a better way, but I lost the audience. And for anyone who's ever taught or lectured knows that when you lose your audience, it is really hard to get them back.
Yeah.
And so a lot of Lilydale uh, presenters are you graded by your feedback forms. My feedback forms were not good that time. I remember specifically one woman's feedback form said that I was horribly insensitive because I said before my guided meditation, make yourself as comfortable as possible, either sitting up straight with your back long or laying down because we want to try to lengthen the spine. And she said that I was insensitive because she was in chronic pain and no position was comfortable. And how dare I suggest that she try to get comfortable? You lose an audience, you lose an audience.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
lost the audience. And
Uh-huh.
so I do not blame them for not having me back for a while. I wasn't actually escorted to the gates. That makes it sound much more dramatic than it was. But all of my proposals were politely returned to me for about a decade until I came back and did a talk on breath work. which was as non-controversial as I could come up with.
Right.
I said, we're
Yeah.
going to learn how to breathe to release anxiety. Anybody got a problem with that? Groovy. All right, let's go. So, yeah, nobody escorted me to the gates. It wasn't that dramatic, but I was not invited back for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, you lose an audience. Sometimes you lose an audience.
Right. So shifting gears
Yes.
to your book, and I know this isn't your only
Yes.
book, but
Mhm.
and you had mentioned guided meditations earlier.
Yes.
Uh, I just wanted to say that I tried the guided meditation on grounding this morning, and it was fantastic. And I'm going
Oh,
to
thank you.
use that. Uh, I have a Monday group that my wife and I host, and I'm going to try that because I found that to be pretty amazing. But
Thank you.
how'd the book come about? What inspired you to say, okay, I've got to put this down for people,
Yeah.
and uh, or did the CD come first?
Well, so of course you can, to everyone listening, you can tell that this is not recent because it's still CD. Um, I will say now that if you buy it on my website, uh, you'll get both the book and downloads of the
Uh,
audio, so you can have all of that together. Um, because honestly, you hand people a CD these days, and they look at it like this. You look at it like they
yeah.
used to look at cassette tapes. Um,
Unless it
and
comes
and
with a
I've been
player, I don't know what to do with this.
so it's a frisbee. Yes, it's a frisbee. Please enjoy, have fun. Uh, but it started because I was asking myself, what are the most common issues I was seeing with my clients? What was I feeling was most needed for the people that I was trying to help? And
Mhm.
the most common, first of all, was grounding. Now, I will preface this by saying, when I got my psyche development training, the woman who taught us said, just so you know, you will spend most of your career attracting to yourself matching pictures, people who have similar issues to what you're going through. Certainly not everyone, but your first 400 or so readings are going to be more for you than they are for the clients. And about after that, it's going to be like 60 for them, 40 for you. So if you're seeing a pattern, it's probably something you need to work on. I will acknowledge that I need to work on grounding, forgiveness, and gratitude. I'm still working
Uh-huh.
on them. Um, I know a lot of people in the metaphysical community have a lot of problems with grounding, and a lot of people who've had psychic experiences, it can be very ungrounding to realize that there's more than what we're told in
Yeah.
kindergarten, and so working with grounding and also trying to understand that grounding doesn't necessarily need to feel heavy or stuck or of this earth. The energies of the earth that run through the planet that we walk on don't have to feel materialistic by any way, shape, or form. It's also the energy of life, of growth, of community, of continuation, because things may have, spirit may not see that time exists, but the earth knows that it does. And
Yeah.
so our connection to the earth can help give us perspective. It can help give us support. It can make us feel like we're building our lives on stone instead of shifting sands. And so working with grounding, when you're feeling like your life's out of control, grounding work is the most important thing for most people to focus
Right.
on a basic level. When you are feeling ungrounded, you will be more easily confused, you will be more ADHD, you will be more likely to get lost. Thank God for Google Maps. Otherwise, I could still be wandering around somewhere trying to find my way home.
Yeah.
And so being ungrounded, yeah, it may be fun to feel like you've got your head in the clouds, but your connection to the earth is important. And I saw that in so many clients that I thought, what can I try to put out there that will help people find more grounding? And so that's where I started with this of I want to put together a couple practices with a workbook, uh, So we've got the guided meditation, we've got discussion on grounding, we've got a workbook with questions that you can focus on and practice to do these over and over again.
Yeah.
And so grounding was where I started. Forgiveness is an easy one. Excuse me, I haven't read for anyone, I don't think, who didn't have something they were dragging around in terms of what do I need to forgive. And I know that even working with forgiveness myself, for all this time, I've still got stuff I'm getting hung up on. The visualization that I use in the forgiveness section came to me while I was doing my yoga teacher training, because not long before I left for it, I had a huge falling out with a friend and business partner. And I was not moving past it. I felt really stuck and really felt like I was not going to get a resolution with the human being that I'd had the problem with. And so I sat in meditation and said, what practice can I do to start to let this go and to find healing, even if I'm not going to find it with by, getting face to face with someone and having the Hallmark movie moment where we argue, we laugh, we cry, we hug, and we're good. Because it didn't feel like that was going to be available with this person. And so that was the practice that I came up with for the forgiveness. I also had a number of clients around that time who Spirit, the universe, just gave me some real opportunities for seeing what lack of forgiveness can do to someone. So I got to tell you a quick
Hmm.
story. I was doing a little psychic fair in Erie, PA. When I say little, there were 10 of us. And this woman comes in and she sits down, and I always start every reading with my opening bit. And I felt like there was a lot of heart chakra stuff going on here. And I started right from the beginning saying, I feel like we've got a lot of heart chakra stuff. We've got some issues with forgiveness. And I really feel like you're kind of getting bound up in some old stuff that's not allowing you to move on. And she listened and she went, okay. And I said, do you have anything you want to talk about? She said, yes, I've got a list. She pulled out a list. Question number one: $20 was stolen off of my bedside table 10 years ago, and I want to know, was it my mother or was it the cleaning lady? Because I am
Oh,
still
wow.
so upset about this. And I thought, all right, this is going to be a ride. And the entire reading was questions like that of why did this happen and why did this person do that and what happened to the copy of my keys from work. Did the kids steal those? Because I know they were just trying to torture me. And I'm thinking, I got a very clear vision of these keys laying at the bottom of a drain pipe. I don't know how they got there, but it doesn't sound like this was personal. And she was like, okay. And at the end of the reading, I'm like, all right, we got 30 seconds left. Let me wrap this up. I said, you gotta let this stuff go. You need to forgive, so because I can feel this dragging you down. And this entire reading, she'd just sort of been sitting there staring at her list and didn't really interact with me too much. And when I said that, for the first time, she looked up at me and she said, why should I forgive them? They don't deserve my forgiveness.
Ooh.
And I said to the promoter, I need to go to the bathroom for a little while. I need a break. Because that lady scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
And it very much was a moment that, we all have turning points. Some are big turning points, some are little turning points. Sometimes you turn around so many times you feel like you're spinning in circles. But that really felt like a defining moment for me of that. Why should I forgive them? They don't deserve my forgiveness. And
Yeah.
forgiveness isn't about the other person, whether they deserve it or not.
Right.
It's about letting things go and moving on so that you aren't feeling stuck
Yeah.
in in a circumstance that, like, does that cleaning lady who may have swiped 20 bucks off a dresser 5 years ago, is she upset because she hasn't been forgiven? No. She probably doesn't remember. Why would she? And but this lady is still furious and wrapped up in that moment. And the more that we can let this stuff go, the the more we're going to heal. And
Right.
so that was a big
Right.
part of why I wanted to write it, why I wanted to do
Yeah.
the forgiveness section.
Yeah, one of the big lessons from A Course in Miracles is that there's nothing to forgive.
Hmm.
And if you can finally get yourself to that point of understanding that,
Yeah.
everybody's on their own journey, they're doing their thing, you're doing your thing,
Hmm.
and there's really nothing to forgive.
Yeah.
But
It's
you, to
it's
learn that, you really have to understand that forgiving someone else is for you,
hmm
you know,
yeah.
and that's
Carolyn Mace
what
said
you
it.
said. Yeah.
Yeah. Carolyn
Yeah.
Mace once said in a talk that forgiveness is very selfish. You do it for yourself so that you can move on, so that you're not trapped in that moment.
Right.
And so
Right.
I yeah, I love the idea of working with forgiveness as a practice
Yeah.
and recognizing the stuff that you're still hanging on to, even if it doesn't serve you. And am I trying to hold myself up as some paragon of forgiveness, saying, no, I've risen above all of it? I totally haven't. I still have stuff that I'm hanging on to, and when I recognize it, I do my best to work with it and
Yeah.
recognize if it is still hindering me right now, or if it's just one of those like quirks where you can say, okay, I'm not upset about you anymore. It's been long enough that I don't really care. I'm not saying I still don't dislike you, but I can try to let go and not get bound up in it.
Yeah.
You know that you haven't forgiven it if it still has power over you. If it doesn't have
Right.
power over you, then it's just part of your story.
Yeah.
Might be a bad part, but it's still just part of your story. And then
So
finally,
gratitude.
gratitude. Yeah. Don't we all need a little more gratitude? And
Mhm.
I really try in both the meditation and in the workbook and in my own thoughts about this to not say gratitude about it towards any specific situation, being, or entity. Like I said, I don't resonate with the idea of God being a bearded person sitting on a mountain that we need to say thank you to every day. But gratitude as a practice of let me think of the things in my life that are good is good for you. It's very easy to get into negative frames of mind and to circle about how everything in your life that's terrible. That's easy. It is really easy to just list off all your petty grievances on a given day. To sit down and list every one of the things in your life that is good, that is a blessing, that is beneficial, is difficult for most of us. And it's partly that's cultural. I've talked to people who say, "Oh, if you focus too much on the good, you're jinxing yourself. You're you're inviting bad things to happen." And some of us do feel like it's almost even in the quiet of our head. Life is so good. Are you bragging? Are you tempting fate? But focusing on what is good, even
Yeah.
if it's my socks are warm and my chair is comfy and I've got a roof over my head and today's a good day.
And those
And
thoughts are helping to release dopamine and endorphins in your body.
yeah,
You know?
gratitude practice is one of those fun things where you can actually go and look up research where they put electrodes on people's brains and shown that focusing on gratitude and mindfulness for even just a couple minutes out of every day changes the way your brain works. It
Right.
forms new neural pathways and strengthens the ones that are there towards more positive thoughts versus just sitting around going, everything's horrible and life is miserable and why am I here? And so that doesn't mean that we can't let negative thoughts intrude. I certainly don't believe in positivity above all things. Anyone who knows me knows that I do not believe in positivity above all things. But it's part of a practice of recognizing that even in the midst of rough times, there's usually something you can find to be grateful for. Then you can go back to
Yeah.
complaining about the stuff that's bad, but find a moment to focus on gratitude. And taking that moment can change your attitude, and changing your attitude often changes your circumstance.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can hope your way out of bad experiences, but it means that it can be a little less overwhelming.
Right.
And so that's part of why I wanted to put gratitude in there. Once again, something I saw from my clients and something I saw that I needed to work on for myself. So I wrote the book for other people. I wrote the book for me.
So I just want to mention to my audience that I will have links from my website to your information, as well as information about your book and how they can get it. It is at this point in the podcast that I always ask the guest to leave our audience with a couple words of wisdom. Now, you've already given us some words regarding grounding, forgiveness, and gratitude, but if there's anything else that you'd like to leave the audience with, this is the time to do it.
One of the most common things that I find myself saying to my clients recently is, please take care of yourself. And in our day to day life, there is often so many things that we have to do, so many things that are asking for our attention, whether it be people or digital devices or bad news or anything that is calling to us at any given moment to say, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And even when we say that we're doing stuff for ourselves, usually it's, I'm eating. Okay. You have to do that. If you don't, you'll die. And while it's important to eat, that's only a small element of taking care of yourself. It's show yourself the care that you hope that you are showing to others and that you wish someone would give to you. And so please take care of yourselves and show yourself the love and care that you hope that you were giving to others and that you hope that people give to you.
Okay, audience, you heard it. Take care of yourself. So, as usual, take what resonates with you, put the rest on a shelf until you're ready for it, and pull it down then. So, we do hope that if you're watching on YouTube, that you will like us, that you will subscribe, and if you're so inclined, support us on Patreon. Until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.